Invocation, Teresa Leeming. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to go with the invocation.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Lemming. I'm from Harmony Vineyard, and I want to start this with a couple of thoughts. One from our wall outside the door here says, "The stability of a government is determined by the character of its citizens." In George Washington's farewell address, he says, "This form of government can only remain if its citizens are of Christian morals and character." So, Father, right now we just come before you and we just ask you to give us strength, open our eyes, give us wisdom and understanding so that we can know and understand what Christian morals and character are all about, and that we can be leaders that lead people in this way. And I want to say a special prayer. It's from Psalm 91. It says, "Because you have made the Lord your refuge and the Most High your dwelling place, there shall no evil befall you, nor any plague or calamity come near your tent. For he will give his angels a special charge over you to accompany and defend and preserve you in all your ways of obedience and service. They shall bear you up on their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone." So, Father, we just thank you for angels that you've given charge over us as we live out our service. We thank you for protection of our thoughts, our hearts, our bodies, our community from attacks and temptations. And Father, we lift up especially our first responders as they are out keeping us safe, keeping us healthy. Ask for special protection over them. And for the members of the commission as they stand, and especially for Jerry Nolte, as right now he's enduring attack for staying true to his moral convictions. And Father, we just lift up all of these things in your name. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Nolte. Here. Commissioner Withington. Here. Commissioner Lawson. Here. Commissioner Wagner. Here. Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Here.
Next is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve this evening's agenda? Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda are ceremonial matters. That would be the 2024-274 honorary resolution regarding September as National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And I believe, Commissioner Wagner, you would like to be recognized on that.
Yes, thank you. As you mentioned, September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And I'm going to take a few items from our resolution this evening just to point out why it's not only important to be aware about this issue this month, but every day and every month and every week, because the numbers are staggering. As our resolution tonight points out, in 2022, more than 49,400 Americans died by suicide, with an estimated 1.6 million suicide attempts, according to the Center for Disease Control. In the last 2 decades, youth suicide has reached its highest rate in more than 20 years. From 2007 through 2021, suicide rates for Americans aged 10 to 24 rose 62%. If that doesn't tell you that this is an issue that we all need to pay attention to, I don't know what else will. I myself have 2 sons in this age range, And so it certainly strikes home. But there are some things that we can do, and our resolution points that out. One, we need to become better educated on the signs of suicide risk factors, as well as actions we can take to help save lives. We can elevate local suicide prevention resources, and there are many here in Clay County. And we need to destigmatize the conversation around mental health while raising awareness to foster a culture of understanding and empathy. And our colleague, Commissioner Withington, has brought up this issue on many occasions. And I think if, especially with that stigmatization with mental health that we sometimes have. And so again, these issues don't just go away unless we deal directly with them. And I am very happy to have taken this opportunity presented by Moms Demand Action and Beacon Mental Health to bring this forward today. And I appreciate my colleagues on this commission for supporting it and signing our resolution document as well. I know we have guests here who can, hopefully I didn't take all their facts and figures. I may have. If I did, I'm sorry, Ann. But I know that they have some things to say as well. So thank you.
Would any other commissioners care to comment before we have our guests come up to comment? Commissioner Withington, you are recognized.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Scott, for doing this. Like I've talked about before, talking about it, we need to talk about it more to end that stigma. In the last year, I've had a coworker, Brent Buck, commit suicide. Had 3 people I went to high school with, Luke Sickman, and a few others, and then a child at Liberty North that I'm friends with his mother. He committed suicide last year. He was being bullied at school. So, so 5 people in the last year that I've known have committed suicide. So I think, mental health is very important to me. And I think stuff like this, bringing it out, talking about it, is very important. So thank you.
Further comment from the commission? If there's anyone who would wish to come forward and comment on this, please feel free. As you come forward, and this is for everyone, please make sure the green light is on the microphone. Let us know your name and then proceed with whatever comments you would care to make. So go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ann Stepp. I am here with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. As Scott said, this month is Suicide Prevention Month. And we just want to bring awareness to that. Moms Demand Action is a group that works to reduce gun violence in our communities. So I have some stats from Everytown, which is our research arm, about gun suicide. Missouri has the 10th highest rate of gun suicide deaths in the nation. And our rate of suicide increased 41% from 2013 to 2022. There was a study done on city gun suicide and by Everytown, and I wanted to just share a couple things from that for your commission to consider. They found that neighborhoods or cities with fewer walkable neighborhoods had higher rates of gun suicide, and cities with the most parks had half the rate of gun suicide than the least number of parks. So some things to think about as you're making decisions. The 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline was made available nationwide in July of 2022. And as of 2022, or 2023, only 1 in 4 people knew about 988. It is, but it received over 5 million calls in that first year. So Beacon Mental Health, which Megan Nielsen is here from, is our local mental health organization in Clay County that answers those calls. So they are answered by local organizations across the country, and that can help people with local resources. So we want to make sure we're supporting them and other organizations that are providing the mental health and answering those calls. 90% of suicide attempts with a gun result in death. So just think about that for a second, 90%. This is higher, much higher than any other means. So the most highly used is drug overdose, but in that case, only less than 3% of suicide attempts are successful. So if we can reduce the number of guns and promote secure gun storage in our communities, we can save lives. Because people, they don't attempt, if they're not successful the first time, they don't attempt again. Let's see, I had that here somewhere. I think it was 30% don't attempt again, or only 30%, sorry, attempt again. So keeping them from attempting with a gun will save lives. 20% of high school students have considered suicide, and 41% of adolescents in homes with guns report that they have easy access. So secure gun storage is a very important thing that I work on. We have a program called Be Smart with Moms Demand Action, where we talk with the community, with parents about the importance of that if they do own a gun. That's all I had. Megan, did you want to say anything?
My name is Megan Nielsen, and I am representing Beacon Mental Health tonight. I'm a youth prevention specialist, and I just wanted to echo what has been said so far, that this is a really serious concern of ours. It's something we work a lot to educate children on. Being on the youth side, one of the many resources Beacon has is that we can go into schools and do presentations and classroom education to kids about suicide prevention. We also offer a lot of stuff about substance use and mental wellness, which is all kind of encompassed in that. But again, the 988 resource is kind of our biggest lifeline that we want to share today. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, if you're concerned about them, even if you're not sure that it fits suicidal thoughts, or you're worried about someone, this is a great line. It doesn't have to be a crisis. You can call and they can say, what are you looking at? What's going on? It's someone local who will come and answer your phone calls, and then they can lead you to way more resources. So that's just what we want to push tonight. Really, 988 is the number that we need to remember, that we can call, we can text. It's local. People down the hall from me answer those phone calls. And it's a really incredible resource that we're very grateful we have. Thank you.
Sure. Is there anyone else wishing to comment? If there is not, we will stand at ease for a moment and have a photograph taken with the presentation of the certificate. Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Wagner, for taking that forward.
Thank you.
Next are public comments. Are there any citizens wishing to comment on any issues not on the agenda? Seeing none. That brings us to our public hearings. The item on the agenda is the 2024 tax levies administrator. And I should open those formally first, should I not? Okay. I'd like to open the public hearings on the 2024 tax levies. Please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just have a brief introduction and overview before turning it back to Commissioner Nolte for the public comment period. As the Commission may recall, this was an item that was on your agenda last week under discussion. So I'll briefly just go over some of the numbers and then the direction that staff received from the Commission, which is what is later on your agenda for consideration of approving the mill levies for 2024. So this chart actually shows the historical assessed valuation for Clay County. As we know, every other year is a reassessment year. This year was not a reassessment year, but it's important to note that, the county continues to grow. Our current assessed valuation, assessed valuation is approximately almost $6.6 billion, and we continue to grow. That is a 2.1% increase compared to last year's assessed valuation. And so this chart will break it down by what we see in real estate, what we've seen in personal property, what we've seen in railroad and utilities, and total current valuation, and then there's always an adjustment for TIFs, tax increment financing projects. And you'll see that in 2024, that number is going down, which what that tells us is there are TIF projects that are coming to their conclusion, and those projects are coming onto the tax rolls at their full value. That number is also up included in new construction of the $144 million. But as you can see, when we look at the adjusted valuation for 2024 compared to 2023, it's a 2.1% increase. So setting the mill levy for the county has two separate mill levies. One is the general mill levy and one is the road and bridge mill levy. So what you see here in this particular chart is our current mill levy for general is 0.0250. After discussion by the Commission last week, the proposed that was requested staff to bring forward is to reduce the mill levy, the current mill levy, to 0.0200. So basically a voluntary rollback of the mill levy by the Commission. That is a rate change of 0.005, and that's really, it boils down to a 20% reduction in the general mill levy. The financial impact in the 24 budget is slightly less than $300,000, basically an 18% reduction in revenue. The second mill levy is the county's road and bridge mill levy. The current rate is 0.0657, and the proposal after your discussion last week, it was to set that at the ceiling rate, which is 0.0658. It's a slight increase of 0.001, basically a 0.2% increase, and that does increase revenues for 2024 for road and bridge, again, must be in road and bridge fund, of slightly less than $99,000, basically $98,722, or basically a 2% increase. In addition to the county's direct mill levies, the Commission does set 3 mill levies for outside agencies. There are 3 of them: the mental health, the development disabilities, and the senior services. So what this chart shows you is the current rate. And after discussion last week, the Commission asked that those rates stay the same. So you'll see the proposed rate for this year, there's no increase and there's no change in the rate. You see the financial impact. There is a financial gain to these 3 agencies because of new construction. So mental health will see an increase of slightly over $113,000. Development disabilities, $135,000, a little over that, and then senior services slightly $56,000. So those agencies will see an increase. Now I will note that the proposed rate, keeping it flat, does not take it to the ceiling. The ceiling is slightly higher than that, but that was the direction that staff received from the Commission. We have heard from 2 of the boards, mental health and development disabilities, of requests that the Commission consider setting the proposed rate for 2024 at the ceiling. I believe there are probably individuals here this evening that will want to speak to the Commission on that particular issue for them. And with that, that is sort of the summary there, and I will sit down and turn it over to Commissioner Nolte for public comment.
Thank you. Just so everybody knows the procedure, we will be taking public comment. We will not be voting during the public comment period. That comes later in regular session under 2024 Ordinance 30 and 31. So what I would also request is when you come up to speak, obviously identify yourself, but also when you are talking about some of the levies, identify which one you are specifically addressing so that we all understand and we're all on the same page right from the get-go. So, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? Please come forward and identify yourself.
Good evening. How are you guys today? I serve on the Developmental Disability Resource Board, and we put in a request for a levy, help me out, Sandra, 0.0970, and your post was 0.0969. So
Just a moment, could you, Administrator, go ahead and put actually that grid up on the screen so that we can all be looking and following the numbers as the citizen is giving us them? Yeah,
Actually,
Yes.
well, this is not the chart I showed, but I saved this one because I thought it might come up. So what you see in this chart is their current rate along with the proposed rate, and this was from last week, right? So this is, instead of proposed, this is the ceiling rate. And so you see that, I believe, if I've got to the right one. Here we go. I'm sorry. This is it. So what you see on this chart is the current rate, what's proposed, which was the direction that Commission gave us, which is to keep it flat. And then you see the ceiling amount, which I believe the gentleman is referring to. And you see the delta there on what the rate change would be and also the dollar amount, which would be the difference.
Which is not large.
Right.
Yeah, it's not large.
Anyway, I apologize for interrupting, but I thought that way we would all be able to see numbers that you were
Yeah, that's
referring
good.
to.
I don't know if all the commissioners are aware of what the DDRB does, because a lot of you are new, so I thought maybe if you didn't mind, I would just give you a little quick history of us. The board was founded in 1971 under the SB 40 law set by the State Missouri Assembly. Taxpayers of Clay County voted to establish the board and supported services for the development and intellectually disabled citizens of Clay County. And we are directed by a 9-member volunteer board appointed by you guys. And this is an increase of, we are directed by 9 members, and we are currently serving 1,520 Clay County residents that are developmentally disabled through various agencies that we support. This is an increase of over 100 people from the same period last year, a 7% increase and a 14% increase in individuals since 2022. We fund vocational workshops, community support employment programs to over 160 individuals in Clay County. We provide funding to support over 130 individuals in group homes, ISL homes, and apartments in Clay County. As most everyone knows, there's a shortage of affordable housing for people with disabilities, especially access abilities. And so we support a couple agencies that provide those homes. We also, as Clay County Development Disability Resource, own 3 homes right now, and we're building two new ones in Clay County. We provide funding for transportation to get the residents from home to work and back, which averages 40,000 trips per year, and another 20,000 for medical and other personal trips. We provide funding for 60 children birth to age 3 for early education intervention programs, which include services for children who are visually impaired, as well as developmentally and/or intellectually disabled individuals. Most of the children receive additional funding for specific therapy programs, also funded by the DDRB. We provide funding for employment and life development skills for 40 youths between the ages of 16 and 18, transitioning out of high school to help ensure they are prepared for the possibilities of adult life and a possibly fulfilled adult life. We provide funding for community integration in the form of educational, social, recreational, physical, occupational, and speech therapy programs, as well as multiple therapy programs which are autism related. These programs touch on the lives of all the 1,500 plus residents that we provide services for. The DDRB partners with the Department of Mental Health, Division of Developmental Disabilities for diagnosis, which is the respite center over in Kansas City. The agencies we fund are required to be nonprofit, approved by the Department of Mental Health, and hold a national certification from an independent inspection called CARF. or other accredited bodies if they don't fall into this area that CARF inspects. We currently provide funding to 12 agencies directly and another 45 agencies through our matching funds for Partnership for Hope waiver. The funds make a multitude of services and supports available to the most vulnerable in the county. In addition, we partner with the Department of Mental Health to provide case management, which the state used to handle it over in Kansas City, and they pushed it back to the counties, which we eventually took on, and we contract with Center for Human Services, and they are actually in our building on Kent. And we invite all of you to come to our meeting. It's the last Tuesday of the month to just listen in and check what we're doing. We're going to be getting into the budget process at the beginning of next month and finalizing it in November so we can get that budget back to you guys by the end of the year. Without the generosity of taxpayers of Clay, these children and adults and their families will live life even more challenging. On the behalf of the agencies and the staff that benefit from these tax dollars, and more importantly, the Clay County residents who receive the direct benefit of these funds, we express our appreciation and gratitude to the taxpayers of Clay County and for the commissioners and their direction. The State Auditor's Office and the Clay County's Auditor have provided necessary information to set the levy. The appropriate documentation has been approved by the DDRB Board and sent to the Clay County Clerk to set and certify the letter in accordance to the law at .0970, which, as you can see, is $7,000 difference basically on what you have. So our issue, I think, is by reducing the levy for us, it becomes more and more hard when times really get hard. And when we went through COVID, we had to provide financing to all these agencies because otherwise we wouldn't have them. They would have been gone. So we did that. And I think the issue standing before us is the $7,000. It's not a big number. And hopefully the commissioners could consider that and approve the full amount. And that's all I have. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on any of the mill levies at this hearing? Is there anyone else wishing to comment? Is there anyone wishing to comment on the mill levy? That closes the hearings for the mill levy. Thank you very much for the comments. That brings us to our consent agenda. Administrator?
The consent agenda allows the Commission to act upon items considered to be routine and approved in one motion. These may include items that have been reviewed by the Commission in a prior session. There will be no separate discussion unless a Commissioner requests that an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. There are 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first item is Resolution 2024-275, approving invoice payments for Clay County from the period of September 14th through September 20th. There are 389 invoices totaling $1,429,041.86. Resolution 2024-272, approve the transfer of ownership of K9 Duke to East Lansing, Michigan Police Department from the Sheriff's Office. And Resolution 2024-277, approving a labor agreement between Clay County, Missouri Road and Bridge Department and Teamsters Local 41.
Thank you. Is there a motion related to the consent agenda? Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Motion has been made for the approval of this evening's consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Next, we move to our regular agenda. We have 3 items this evening. The first one is 2024-276. Administrator.
Resolution 2024-276 is approving invoice payments for the Clay County Prosecutor's Office from September 14th through September 20th. There are 12 invoices totaling $3,879.68.
Commissioner Johnson.
Move to approve 2024-276.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2024-276. Is there any discussion or comment? Seeing none, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson?
I recuse myself.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Commissioner Withington?
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson? Yes. Commissioner Wagner?
Aye.
Motion passes 5 in favor, 1 recusal.
Next item on the agenda, we just had a public meeting regarding, and that is 2024 Ordinance 30. Administrator?
2024 Ordinance 30 is setting the tax levies for 2024 for the Clay County mill levies. And the auditor's here if you have any questions.
Please proceed, Mr. Auditor.
Yes, Victor Hurlbert, Clay County Auditor. I don't have a whole lot to add. I'll just basically mention, happy to answer any questions on the document before you. I'll point out, though, that the general levy, I'd just like to point out that it does include a sales tax reduction on your maximum. The ceiling this year is actually 0.2134. And then we have a sales tax reduction that's from our quarter-cent sales tax that goes to the general fund. So we take half of those revenues and reduce that off the ceiling. So that provides a 0.1882 sales tax reduction. And then you have a voluntary, Commission's proposing a voluntary reduction of 0.0052. So that's how we get to the 2 cents general fund levy. So I just wanted to explain that, how that basically works on the state auditor's pro forma. I'm happy to answer any questions for the general levy on 2024 Ordinance 30 of 2 cents or the road and bridge levy of 0.0658 cents per $100 assessed valuation.
Commissioner Withington.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to make a motion that we approve 2024 Ordinance 30 as presented.
Motion's been made for the approval of 2024 Ordinance 30. Further discussion? Commissioner Wagner, you are recognized.
Thank you. As we discussed last week, I was not in favor of dropping the county general levy to that amount. As we were talking about a little bit earlier, that's about $300,000. Noting that a couple of things. One is we've not actually seen the budget presentation, but my expectation is that things got more expensive, not cheaper. And as we have talked about the need and desire to fill positions, pay people what they're worth, and so on, I do not believe that it's in our best interest to cut. Rather, I would just as soon keep what we have to make up for that and to structurally make sure that our budget is in the position it needs to be in. I would also point out that once we start dropping due to the Hancock Amendment, if for whatever reason we find that we're not as flush with cash as we want to be, it's very hard to then raise that back. And so I am of the mind and position that if we want a structurally balanced budget now into the future, we should make sure that we properly make sure that we have the funds that we need. And for that reason, I will be voting no today.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, a couple questions. First, Mr. Auditor, if you can go over what you just said again about sales taxes. I didn't understand that completely.
I apologize for that. Yeah, so
That's my fault, not yours. I'm slow.
Yeah, it's fine. So Chapter 67, essentially, of the Missouri statutes, when the county enacted, we have 2 general fund sales taxes. We have a half-cent general fund sales tax and a quarter-cent for a total of 3/4 of a cent. And then, of course, our law enforcement sales tax is only for law enforcement. The provision of that sales tax that the Missouri legislature allowed counties to put before the voters basically required that every year they would have to reduce their maximum general levy, general fund property tax levy, by 50% of the sales taxes received. So we go through a calculation every year, and it has to be certified by a state auditor's office. So we calculate what half of the total revenues are from that particular sales tax, and that reduces our ceiling that's available on the general levy. So that's why it's all the way down to 2.5 cents, 0.00252, as opposed to the actual ceiling without that sales tax provision would be near 21 cents. And the original original general fund levy, the ceiling was actually 35 cents when it started. So it just kind of gives you some context perspective of where we're at. And so we have taken, to Commissioner Wagner's point, we have taken some voluntary rollbacks over the years that have further reduced that levy in addition to the sales tax rollback. But that's essentially how the math works out
So
today.
if this were to be approved exactly as it was proposed here, on the general fund, it's a reduction of, I think, $299,000 total. Does that include that sales tax that you're talking about? Is that all inclusive there? Or is there additional?
Yes, it does include, it's after the sales tax rollback.
So after the sales tax rollback, everything included, it's a reduction of $299,000?
That's right.
Okay, and then, and if there's an increase in the roads and bridges of $98,000, would that have any impact on the sales tax, or is that all inclusive, or?
It does not. That's
Okay.
a separate issue.
Okay, and then my next question, this might be for our county administrator. The roads and bridges section, is that the max, the increase that's proposed, is that the max allowed?
That is correct. What is in your ordinance at the road and bridge mill levy at 0.0658 is the maximum ceiling allowed based on, as Auditor Herbert said, you know, that we include in your packet is the state form that has to be calculated. And so the maximum ceiling for road and bridge is 0.0658.
And that will raise it about $98,000, right? And then what's the total of that for roads and bridges would that be for this next year? What I'm trying to get through to is the difference between what we're required to pay based on that lawsuit versus
Yeah, roughly 4.4 million, and then our obligation's about 4.8 million to the road districts. Now that includes.
Our obligation's 4.8 million,
That's correct.
but this will bring in how much?
4.4 million.
Okay, so we're still short from what we're legally obligated to pay.
That's right.
In that roads and bridges section.
Now I will note that includes two components, the 4.8 million. It includes one, the property tax true-up to get to 14 cents for the property within the road district jurisdictions. And then also $1 million sales tax obligation to get to 4.8. So 3.8 million is the property tax differential. 1 million is the sales tax payment. That's part of the agreement.
So what I'd really like to see, obviously this would take years to do, is to get us to a point where our property taxes for roads and bridges match our legal obligations for that on paper. So that we're bringing in that amount. So that would take raises over several years, but obviously I'd want to offset those from the general fund, because right now we're just using general fund to transfer over to offset that. It's just a numbers thing, I guess, but that way it's a little bit more clear that, hey, we're not paying this because we want to, we're paying this because we have to. We're required to by the courts who said the county shall pay this. So I would like to make that line even over the years. So this year, by this proposal, it's an increase of $98,000 to the roads and bridges, a decrease of $299,000 to the general fund, which is a difference of $201,000. A decrease, overall decrease in property tax of $201,000. So just to make that clear, so everyone understands what this is, and certainly it's great to reduce taxes, and I'm all about reducing taxes, and I support this. However, before we start touting a tax reduction, that reduction that we're proposing right now with this amendment, this comes out to, if I do my numbers right, it's 77 cents per person per year. When you take it by the household, that's about 110 households in the county. That's $1.80 per household per year. So when we're talking about a tax reduction, it's really not much of a tax reduction. So I think we've got to be careful if we're going to tout that we just made a tax reduction, because I'll tell you what, my $1.80, I'm not going to notice a difference in my household by $1.80 over the year. But nonetheless, I'm in favor of this reduction, and I'm also in favor of getting that roads and bridges up to our legal obligation.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. I just, we discussed this at length last week, so I'll be pretty brief on it. Just want to kind of echo the sentiments of Commissioner Wagner. Would prefer to leave the general fund where it's at. As I mentioned last week, our two most expensive departments here in the county by far are the Sheriff's Office and the Road and Bridge Department. And I've heard pretty widespread agreement on this commission of a desire to increase spending in those departments, even above and beyond my desire for spending. Y'all are some big spenders, but that's a good thing. Those are important things. We should fully fund those things. But it is, like I said last week, hard for me to make the math work on a desire to spend more money on our two most expensive items while at the same time, reducing the revenue that we have available to do exactly that. So I would prefer to stay at where we're at, and that's what I would advocate for, and those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I apologize for buzzing in again, but I can't resist the auditor being here because I recall a certain audit that was performed. You know where I'm going? You maybe know where I'm going. That spoke to the Road and Bridge Fund and its long-term financial viability. And my memory, which can be spotty, seemed to suggest long-term that fund is going to be in more and more trouble. And by trouble, I mean where we may have to put even more general fund dollars into it. But again, I could be spotty, but you wrote it. And I wonder if you might just make a couple of comments as to the long-term viability of that fund.
Yeah, I think, happy to. I think, the audit really talked about, what we talked about in this year in particular. We have a delta that's growing because our road and bridge levy is less than half of the 14-cent obligation. And so it's not always equal just based on the proportion of those jurisdictions that it's going to be half and half, but it's pretty darn, close now. Now that we're under that 7-cent threshold. So we are subsidizing to the extent that really our property tax is just all going to cities and road districts. We really don't have a property tax supporting the road and bridge department. So it's really supported by, county sales tax and use taxes, which have been strong. And have really, I think through the diligence of, recent budgets and we've seen improving and strong fund balances in our road and bridge fund, where we're saving strategically how to meet those matching obligations for our grants. So we're doing that intentionally, but there was a time near the end of 2020 where, the Road and Bridge Fund was in a, negative fund balance situation on a financial reporting, and we've completely turned that around, and we're in a very healthy position now in that particular fund. But yeah, so I think long-term, the delta is just going to continue to grow, and I pointed to, possible solutions we could look at for that. As Commissioner Johnson said, you can raise the road and bridge levy. That's certainly one option. You could look at restructuring the agreement. I think there could be a reason to look at why isn't the 14-cent obligation rolling back like every other Hancock Amendment rollback in the same manner. If we did that, that would reduce our increasing obligation over time. And so those are some, main observations. But yeah, currently, really the main revenue sources for the Road and Bridge Fund are going to be subsidies from the general fund, sales tax, general use taxes, and there's some ancillary revenue fees in there. But yeah.
Thank you. And I'll just end it by saying I totally agree with the notion that we should see balance in those funds. We don't have that today. And knowing that we will be freezing taxes for those individuals who wish to exercise that capability for those who are 62 and above. There's a lot of things out there that suggest to me that allowing someone the opportunity to buy an extra candy bar or a big gulp, which is all they'll get, should we drop this today, I find that not to be a compelling reason to affect so many other things, especially when there are some unknowns that will be coming in the next couple of years. But I recognize I may be in the minority in that position, but I feel compelled to at least put those points out there. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions for our auditor? Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on the the two items that we have currently under discussion? I see no other commissioners. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Rick White. I'm one of the guys in fact, I'm the chair of the Clay County Developmental Disability Resource Board. I'm generally a pretty conservative individual. The Hancock Amendment, what Scott's talking about, is correct. Once you go down that path, you're not getting it back. And being a conservative voter, to get $1.87, maybe 187 or 1,800. Now I'm thinking a little different, but $1.87, I'd leave it alone.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else wishing to comment on these two items? Seeing none, with that, Commissioner Withington, you are the maker of the motion, so if you are open to any closing comments and then to close. I'm sorry. Yes, I thought you were motioning that you wanted to speak.
I close.
Very well, very well. With that, please call the roll.
Commissioner Withington,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Thompson,
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter,
No.
Commissioner Lawson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wagner.
No.
Motion passes 4-2.
Thank you. That brings us to the third and final item on our regular agenda, and that is 2024 Ordinance 31. Administrator?
2024 Ordinance 31 is setting the outside tax levies for 2024. As we discussed earlier, there are three outside agencies: the Mental Health, the Development Disability Board, and the Senior Services. And County Auditor Herbert is here to answer any questions you may have.
Please proceed.
Victor Herbert, Clay County Auditor. Nothing really too much to add. What's before you in 2024 Ordinance 31 is with keeping the levies flat, 0.0808 mental health, DDRB 0.0969, senior services 0.0403. The ceiling doesn't change for senior services, so that is their ceiling, their current levy rate. I'll offer that staff has prepared the option, if commission so chooses, to go to the ceiling route. So that's ready and available if you would like to, of course, amend this ordinance and go for the ceiling, the 0.0001 1/10,000th of a cent increase. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the pro forma.
Commissioner Withington, you were up first.
So my first question is, we weren't presented last week that these individual boards had voted to raise it to the max. Why is that?
I didn't have that information last week, so I don't know when we received that information.
Okay.
So I can speak to that a little bit. We've had a little bit of an inconsistent process through the years, admittedly, from the time I've done this, to the extent that in some years, this county and commission has basically asked the boards to vote on the levy, and then the county would basically ministerially honor that and certify it. But I think, and council can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the statutes basically outline, and that's why we're here today voting on it, is that this board, the county commission actually has the authority to set the levies. So, that's been our process, and so they did, send that feedback as far as putting the pro forma document together for them. But of course, you have the discretion to keep it flat if you so choose.
Well, so next time, I would like that presented to us before we even start having this discussion, so that way there's no confusion between us and those boards, because, I'd like to honor their request, but, last week that wasn't presented to us.
And I will say, candidly, I think it's a time crunch. We have the last assessed valuations kind of first, second week of September. And so we put these documents together. These boards meet when they can, on their schedules. So for instance, we received the DDRB information confirmation, and we can assume that they'll want the ceiling. We don't know that for sure.
Okay.
But we received that, yesterday.
Okay.
Now we had mental health in hand, we had seniors in hand. So I think going forward, we can, make that improvement, include that information.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. Well, I would feel neglectful based on the ceremonial piece I brought earlier here, so I am going to move to amend 2024 Ordinance 31 to push all 3 levies to their maximum.
Motion's been made on 2024 Ordinance 31 to put all of the 3, that is to say mental health, DDRB, and social services to their maximum. We have an amendment on the floor, so we will be discussing that amendment. Wait a minute, yeah. I mean, we're going to still discuss it and all that, but I just wanted to point out that we now have an amendment to the, although I suppose there should have been a motion on the underlying, so it's not really an amendment, but it's a change on that. You're wanting to amend it, so cool. Commissioner, okay, are you concluded? Okay. We will always come back to you, you know that. Commissioner Carpenter, you are recognized.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I support the amendment, or whenever it becomes an official amendment. Agree that we ought to do that. I also, just as a brief housekeeping, agree with Commissioner Withington. I think before we made the decision last week, we ought to have checked in with these important boards. They're multi-million-dollar operations that serve a lot of people. They do a lot of good work, and we ought to have communicated better. You should have been invited to the meeting last week, and certainly we should have had a presentation with regard to what position your boards had taken with regard to where you wanted the rate. I think my understanding is that this commission has a history of a precedent of honoring the request of the boards. I think we ought to honor that again this year, continue that tradition forward. And so I apologize that didn't happen. I could have reached out to, any one of us could have. Everybody shares some of the responsibility, and so I apologize. That being said, Commissioner Wagner has offered us an opportunity to remedy that situation. We had a good presentation about all the important work that these boards do, serving folks who are some of the most vulnerable in our community and in need. Strongly support the amendment.
Commissioner Lawson, you're recognized.
Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks, whatever it was, I heard several commissioners on this board say, we are going to stop giving any money to any social organization, stop giving money to any civic organization, because we need all of our money to do roads and bridges, give our people raises, blah, blah, blah. So the consensus kind of was, and I went out and I talked to several groups, and in talking with those groups, I just asked them the question, hold up your hand, tell me, do you think that's a good idea? 90% of those people in every darn group said to me, I think it's a good idea. Our money belongs trying to provide the services for people that need the services, our roads, whatever else it might be. So now I look at this, our mental health board gets $5,410,838. Our disabilities board gets $6,489,042.62. And our senior board gets $2,698,745. Now, that's a lot of money. That is a huge amount of money. Disabilities board, I've had firsthand dealings with. Years ago, when my husband was commissioner, we had, the county provided jobs for children or young people with disabilities, or anybody with disabilities. They're the ones that cleaned the courthouse. They did all kinds of stuff. They were amazing. One of the young men was kind of a family friend of ours. His dad and my husband were good friends, and his son worked here. Was a wonderful young man, worked his little buns off, was great. I see the value of every one of these boards. I truly do. But I also think that's a hell of a lot of money, going out, if you add it up. If you give them their max, we'll just take and I may be doing this wrong, and I know our auditor will quickly correct me because I am no mathematician. But on the disabilities board, if we give them up the max, was it $7,000 that they're going to see as an increase? We're not talking huge amounts here, but nevertheless, I think that last week we talked about leaving everything as it was. We got to start being fiscally responsible. We said we were going to do that when we were all elected. I heard that come out of everybody's lips, mine included. I think that what we give is huge. And I think everyone, I don't mean to be a hard nose, and I'm not doing that. I have a heart, honest to God I do. We all have to learn to live within our budgets. And I think these are the budgets we've set. I don't see that there's anything wrong with them. I think they do tremendous work, and I think we're giving tremendous money. So in my opinion, I would like to see everything stay as it is, continue to give them the money that they get, and I'm happy to give it to them. But I think there comes a point where you have to start monitoring what you do.
Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Diana, could you put back up on the screen the slide that you had of all three of these bodies?
Bear with me for just a second.
So like Commissioner Lawson, I too appreciate, like all the commissioners, I should say. That's it, yeah. We all appreciate the work that these different entities do. They do very good work. My family's actually been part of some of that, using those services, I should say. So I tell you, I appreciate as much as anybody else. I really appreciate the DDRB, you guys coming in today and speaking. I got a chance to meet with them actually earlier today, this afternoon, at a fundraiser, and I appreciated that. However, I want to make sure everyone understands the proposal before the amendment. The proposal was to leave things the same, and there was no increases at all. And if you look at that, I just want to make sure you're clear, by leaving things the same, it's an increase in income to these services. So, I'll put it on my screen so I can see it a little better here. So for example, mental health, if we leave it the same, no raises, they're still going to get an increase of an additional $113,000 plus, a 2% increase. Same for the developmental disabilities. If we don't raise it at all, they're still going to get a 2% increase of $135,000. One of the options is we could have gone revenue neutral. Well, that is, there's no change at all. There's no increase at all in anything that they get, which would be a slight reduction. But when I say reduction, a reduction in the mill rate, but the mill levy. But at the same time, we didn't do that. We proposed let's keep it the way it is now, which includes for them a slight 2% increase. I tell you, on top of that, again, I appreciate the work that they do. However, if you were to ask me, what's probably one of the worst times you can think of to raise taxes, I'd say right now. I'd say right now, and the way our economy is right now. I think it's absolutely crazy to raise taxes. Government takes so much money from everybody. Whether it's the county level, whether it's the state level, whether it's the federal level, cities, different taxing entities. We take so much money from people, and it's just getting out of control. It's just tax and spend. And I'm not saying spending on these things is a bad thing. Like I said, I think they're good things. We got to stop. We got to put a limit on things somehow. So there's absolutely no way that I can justify increasing the mill levy on these things. As much as I like these services, I think by leaving them as they are gives them a 2% increase over what they got the previous year, which I think is more than fair, particularly in this economic environment that we're in, and so many people struggling. Again, it's not a lot, but just the idea of raising taxes at this point to me I think is a very bad idea, and something that I would not do. Thanks.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Thank you. So I've actually got a question for you, Commissioner. Yeah. First, for Commissioner Nolte. Just because you've been here the longest, I think it's fair to say. And so I want you to weigh in on this, if you're willing, especially with regard to whether or not it has indeed been past practice and perhaps a long-standing precedent that the commission has honored the request of the boards who oversee these funds going back, I believe, many years. That's my understanding, that's the way we've always done it before. And so, I think you've been here since 2014, so you would have some insight into that. And like I say, I would advocate that we simply carry forward that tradition so that they get the resources they need to carry out the functions that they do, which, as Commissioner Johnson mentioned, we all agree are very important. And would just add, and I've made this point a number of times before, and I'll keep making it, but over time, revenue is going to increase. That happens for several reasons. It happens because of population growth. It happens because of increased valuations of property. It happens because of inflation. So as that happens, you'll see the numbers go up. You're going to keep seeing it year after year after year as we continue to do this work together. The numbers are going to keep going up. But what happens parallel to that at the exact same time is that expenses go up. Why? For the exact same reasons. Population growth, inflation, et cetera. And so in order to not experience what is a real world cut, you have to let the two go up in tandem. Otherwise, it is a cut, it is a reduction. Even if it doesn't look like a cut on paper, it is a reduction in practice. So those are my thoughts, and I would love yours as well.
It's funny in a way because, we've worked together for a while, and I was actually thinking about jumping in before I called on you, but I already said I would go to you next, so out of courtesy, because I did want to weigh in on this. Just for the, technically, the presiding commissioner will not vote on an item like this unless there is a tie. And I wanted to express that, even though there may or there may not be a tie, but it was an issue that I appreciate you pointing that out. I do want to weigh in on. Again, I am also someone who is in favor of cutting taxes more than raising them. However, there are a couple of things that occurred to me. First off, the precedent that you're speaking of on outside agencies. This is not an outside agency. This is a different animal than if we allocate money towards some of the others that are listed elsewhere in our budget. This is a different animal altogether than, say, Northland Neighbors or someone of that nature. This is a different thing totally. So yes, I think we should be, I don't know of a time when we did not honor the request of a board, and I don't see any reason to break that precedent at this point. Because they're asking within the legal parameters. So we're not talking about an unreasonable ask in this case. The other thing that occurs to me when I think about terms of taxation, what we will and what we will not be spending money on, there are some groups I feel that get special consideration, for lack of a better way to put it, at least in my mind. And those include people who are in a position to where they need our assistance without any, that they would not have any control over whether they are in that group. And I think all three of these particular entities represent people. No one chooses to have mental health issues. Nobody chooses to have disabilities. And while, I guess to a degree I've chosen to be a senior citizen, but the alternative, although it's been suggested on occasion, is not all that appetizing. So my inclination is to be in favor of the amended version of this. The other thing is, I think when you spend your money, when we spend our money, when a citizen spends their money, they are communicating. They are to a degree voting with their dollars. And when we talk about this sort of thing, I think we need to think what it is we are communicating. And I think what we need to communicate in this particular instance is that we value the help that these people are given, and I think a civilized society does in fact extend these. I think that's a discussion long since settled that yes, these should be, these are areas where it is appropriate for us to come in and bring public assets to bear, because I believe that is what the public wishes. So from that point of view, I think that as opposed to on the other two that we had just discussed, the other two levies, those are going to impact us internally. And I think there were good and intelligent discussion points on both sides of that question. But those are going to be discussions we're going to have to grapple with here in this chamber and with our staff. These three items are things that are going to need to be dealt with outside of this chamber, and that we are, I think we need to give some deference to those that we have actually appointed. Like was said, we, I am honored to nominate, and then this body decides whether that nomination is worthy, and we place these persons on these boards and commissions. Some are advisory, some have actual action. But the other thing that we're talking about communicating is, I think whenever possible, we need to be supporting our boards and commissions, because we put them there, and to undercut them, I think, communicates something that I do not think is the kind of communication that forwards our mission as a county commission. All that being said, if it comes to a tie vote, I will be supporting the amendment to, let me get our number correct, 2024 Ordinance 31. So I will be supporting that particular amended version of that ordinance. So with that, I've just run on probably about 20 minutes longer than I should have. But thank you for the question. I appreciate it. And that makes me look a little less self-centered. Somebody asked me, so I get to answer. Thank you. Commissioner Wagner, I believe you're seeking recognition.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple more comments. It is not lost on me what we have been told in this meeting today. Earlier in this meeting, we heard that the amount of the number of young people and adults in general who have suicidal ideation and or commit suicide has increased. The number of people calling 988 because of mental health issues have ballooned up to, if I think I heard that right, 25 million calls, and someone can correct me if I am incorrect in what I heard. Just a little bit ago in our public comment section, we heard that in the last year, the number of people who have come seeking assistance from our Developmental Disabilities Fund has increased by 100, and it is 14% more than what they had in 2022. That tells me that yes, even though even out of freeze there is more money coming, that is coming from the growth in this county, which is then reflected, I think, in the number of people who are now seeking services. So the math is pretty easy for me to follow, and to say that I'm going to short you what I could give you in the amount of $7,000 or whatever it is, knowing full well that the cost of providing that service is only going to get higher and will outpace, most likely, what we are going to be giving in these mill levies, seems to me that I am not going to value signal that I don't like taxes. What I will value signal is I will support people. And 60 children, 14% more people coming through over 2022 is what I'm about with this. And I'm okay saying, you know what, I'm going to raise your taxes to go support these people who may very well be my neighbor. And I'm good with that. So that's where I'm at, folks. So I just had to just get on that point. Thank you.
The discussion up here, and we do have persons in the here present that may well want to comment. So we don't seem to have anybody who's a commissioner who's wanting to weigh in at this moment. Would anyone from the public care to weigh in? If you would, please come forward and address us at the podium.
Rick White again, chairperson of the Clay County DDRB. Last year, we had $7.2 million in ask, and we received $6.5 million. $6.5 million is a lot of money, absolutely correct. The other thing on this 2% revenue change, these people that work with the individuals with developmental disabilities, they'd like to get a little raise. They might get maybe a 0.2% raise by the time we have all the rest of these expenses. And we have this housing crisis where we're struggling to find affordable housing to be able to house individuals with developmental disabilities. Those costs have skyrocketed. So we're really not asking for hardly anything. Thank you.
By the way, Mr. White. At some point in the future, I believe there is an effort to address the housing issue vis-a-vis the folks who have disabilities. This is maybe not quite the right forum for that, and also I would want to allow enough time. But if at some point we can get together and you can talk about the plans the DDRB has along those lines, I think that would make a very very appropriate discussion for us to have and to be informed as far as the efforts that the board is making.
I'd be more than willing anytime, any place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lawson, you were seeking recognition.
Yes. So, I mean, Scott and John have made some excellent points. I see where you're coming from. Something I'd like to suggest, and I suggested this several times, and it's fallen on deaf ears. If we're so concerned, and I think we all are, about all of these boards, on the DDRB, they have people who need employment, and I would like to see us really investigate the feasibility of having those people come back and start offering the services here in the courthouse, the cleaning and different things that they did before. They're more than willing, any of these organizations, they want people to hire their folks. So I'd really like to see us, if we've got a heart, as I think we all do, this is something that we can do to contribute to this over and above. So I would like in the future, or shortly, to see us start investigating the feasibility of bringing those folks back in.
Thank you. You're right. We did at one time have that, and I believe we were working through a vendor. I don't remember the exact structure. Yeah. I don't. I would like to revisit that also at some point in the future. Commissioner Withington, you were seeking recognition.
I was just going to say I agree with what you said, Jerry, about having them come back to have a conversation about affordable housing for the disabled, because I know they're building a house over by where I live right now in Carriage Hills, and that neighborhood, there's 2 homes that just got built right next door that are $500,000, so I hope they're not having to spend $500,000. Hopefully they're able to get some kind of grant money or something to help with their costs, because I don't think too many people would consider $500,000 homes affordable housing, so.
No. By the way, and it's going to be fascinating when they do make their presentation. I've been able to, they've been kind enough to show me some of that, and they're kind of a pod operation, so that it is not just housing, but housing that is very conducive to those who would be inhabiting those. But I don't want to steal your thunder. Plus, likely as not, I'll get it wrong. I'd rather have primary source of information on this. Are there any further comments? Anyone from the assembly here? Very well. With that, Commissioner Wagner, I believe you have the motion on the floor.
And let me say I appreciate the conversation. I think it's an excellent idea from Commissioner Lawson, which I think would just be a procurement issue. So whenever at that point that comes up, certainly worth investigating, and I think that makes absolute sense. Other than that, I close.
Very well. Motion is on the floor to pass an amended version of 2024 Ordinance 31, which would take all 3 of those items to the maximum. Is that a fair restatement? Please call the roll. I'm sorry?
Well, I think the motion is to amend it, but you said to pass the amendment.
Okay.
So this is just to amend it, and then if this were to pass, we would then take up the amended resolution.
Thank you for
ordinance, excuse me.
Very well. So this is what we are going to be voting on, ladies and gentlemen, is the amendment to alter 2024-31, and then following that, we will take a vote on Ordinance 31 as amended. So we vote on the amendment first, and then we have a separate vote on the ordinance itself. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, it'll either be the original ordinance or the amended ordinance, depending on
Pending.
this vote.
Exactly so. Very well. So we are now voting on the amendment. Thank you for the clarification. We are now voting on the amendment proposed by Commissioner Wagner for 2024 Ordinance 31. There is no further discussion. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Withington.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
That brings us to what is now 2024 Ordinance 31 as amended. Is there any discussion on that? Commissioner Wagner, I believe your mic is on, so you are...
I assume I need to make a motion to that effect.
Yes.
So move to approve 2024 Ordinance 31 as amended.
Motion has been made for the approval of 2024 Ordinance 31 as amended. Is there any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Johnson, go right ahead.
What's the increase for the senior services? What's the dollar figure?
Actually, their ceiling is the same as their current rate. So you really, this ordinance, you'll adjust to, taking those two up to the ceiling.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments before we go to closure? Seeing none, Commissioner Wagner, you are free to make any closing comments and to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Wagner.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
No.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yes.
Commissioner Carpenter.
Yes.
Commissioner Withington. Commissioner Lawson.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-1.
Excuse me. Move on to discussion items. We have two items under discussion. The first one is Chapter 100 Economic Development Incentives, and that would be the administrator, so please proceed.
Thank you, Commission. We have on your agenda this evening a sort of an overview presentation of Chapter 100 industrial revenue bonds, which are an economic incentive tool that is available to public entities. It's been many years since the county has considered or offered a Chapter 100 on an economic development project. We have been approached on a particular project by a developer that has asked whether the county would consider that. And so we do not have a proposal, so we don't have any data, but I wanted to take this opportunity to provide an opportunity for Sid Douglas, who is with Gilmore and Bell, the county's bond counsel, to come and present to the commission what is a Chapter 100, how does it work, how does it impact the county, and what items should the commission be considering if they should receive a Chapter 100 request.
Well, I particularly appreciate that myself because I'm not sure there's been a Chapter 100 since I've been on the commission. There was one just prior to. So I think it's instructive for all seven of us to hear a good kind of a primer on what it entails. So please proceed.
Good evening, Presiding Commissioner, Commissioners. I'm Sid Douglas with Gilmore and Bell, Kansas City. We're bond counsel to the county. You are right, as you indicated, the last one that was done was in 2014. The tax impact of that was the last year that was done last year. If it didn't terminate before that, but that was been the last possible time there would have been any abatement. So it has been a while. I don't think anybody here is, and maybe Mr. Graham might have been around and been involved, but nobody else has probably heard any of these kind of discussions. Chapter 100, as it provides tax abatement, is kind of a combination of a couple of different things. One, Chapter 100 authorizes governmental entities like the county to issue bonds for commercial or warehousing, different kind of projects like that. And the financing can be structured in one of two ways. The county could issue bonds, make a loan of those proceeds to a private entity for purposes of financing the cost of that project to be completed. Alternatively, the same thing, the county issues bonds, but instead of making a loan, they use those proceeds to actually acquire the assets. They go into the county's name, and then they're leased to that private company for a particular term for the financing. So we combine the latter of those two alternatives of having the county issue bonds and making a lease arrangement with the private entity with the general concept of assets that are owned by the county, the county courthouse, any of your physical structures, your police cars, all those kind of things, you don't pay any taxes on that. That anything that's owned by a governmental entity, by constitution and statutes, all implemented, it comes off the tax rolls. And so we combine those two concepts together. Your county would issue bonds, you'll acquire the assets, you would lease it to the private company, and because of that, then it comes off the tax rolls. The level of incentive that is done is contractually after that point, because it comes off the tax rolls. You can agree to abate all the taxes for both real and personal property purposes, or you can just have a proportionate share of those taxes being abated, but that's subject to being negotiated. But as part of the implementation of the Chapter 100 from the private company's interest, there's 3 or 4 primary benefits. Obviously, if you're going to abate the payment of property taxes, it decreases a major line item that they have in operating their business. So reduced property taxes is beneficial in their operations. To the extent that there are assets that are involve construction materials, so you're actually building buildings, you can provide a sales tax exemption on those construction materials, just like when the county would build a new building. It's like you can provide sales tax exemption certificate for anything that you acquire that's materials to be exempted from any kind of sales taxes. So you can do that for the Chapter 100 project also. You also, there are certain assets that, to the extent that they're personal property, you can also provide sales tax exemption for the acquisition of that equipment. That has to be done in conjunction with the Department of Economic Development. They also have to concur in what you would want to do. So the county could offer that, but it would also be subject to getting approval from the Department of Economic Development. So those are the 3 main benefits. It obviously decreases the cost of acquiring and putting the project into operation, and also decreasing the cost of operating costs as it goes throughout the term of their operations. This is applicable pretty much to any kind of commercial project. There's a number of things that are listed. There's warehouses, distribution facilities, office industries, but kind of I usually just characterize it as anything that's commercial, like an apartment complex, to the extent that it's commercially operated, it would fit into that category. So all those things are eligible to be funded this way. And as I said, it just kind of a quick overview is like the county issues the bonds. You're going to be taking legal title to the property, and you would be requested to lease it to the company. That's the structure. There's a number of agreements that are put in place in order to do that. And again, you'll be implementing some level, or be requested to provide some level of tax abatement for property taxes, and probably one or more of the other alternatives that we talked about. Probably the most important thing from the county standpoint to remember is we will have a number of agreements, an agreement that we usually call a development or performance agreement. That will include covenants of indemnification from the private company. So if there's anything that happens with the asset, even though you have legal title, you don't really have any operational control over it, but if anything happens, there's the likelihood, or there's a possibility that you'd be named in some litigation. So there'll be indemnification, there'll be insurance provisions. But unlike other bonds that the county would issue, or other financings the county would do for your own physical assets, we usually require that the company that's requesting the incentive buy the bonds themselves. And so there's no financial resources or economic risk to the county of making any payments on the bonds. That's completely removed. They're not going to ask you for that. If they would sell it to a lender or to somebody else down the road, they would know that the bonds are payable solely from the monies that are provided by the company, as opposed to anything that the county would put into the transaction. There are a number of procedural aspects. I'm not going to get into those. I want to try to keep it high level this evening. Is how do you implement it? What does it mean to them, to you, things like that. So I won't get into any details like that. As Ms. Wright indicated, there's some things that you probably want to consider as part of implementing that. Anything that might be requested is, from a policy standpoint, you may want to, before getting any details about the level of abatement, is that you want to make sure you understand that there's a certain level of commitment from a dollar standpoint. And there's sometimes that, the type of project, there may be significant jobs that you're providing an incentive for. So there's things that you're looking for to get kind of from a standpoint, from the county standpoint of the transaction, is you're getting commitments for capital infrastructure that's being put into your county, and maybe jobs that are being created, a combination of both of those things. So you want to think about those, and it may be that you also ask as part of the project that they help fund public infrastructure may be needed surrounding the development. But those would be all the things that you'd want to consider before you'd actually approve or implement anything particular about a project. That's kind of a high-level overview of it. As I said, there's a lot of processes. You'll have to provide notices to all the taxing districts who would be impacted. And there's some agreements that need to be put in place to assure that we've got the insurance, the indemnifications, and different things like that. But I'm going to pause there and let you guys ask any questions you may have, so we can try to get that addressed.
Yeah, I do. As you say, the last one was in 2014, and it kind of landed on my desk on day one, which was quite a surprise when I became presiding commissioner. And it took a little bit of homework to go through the agreement. If I remember, it was relatively muscular. It was a pretty thick document.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of paper. But
And what I was told was you got 24 hours to read and approve this, or the sky will fall. And we got it done. But the point is this: can you give us some idea? And I realize that I don't want you to engage in any value judgments, but as far as just performance, that particular Chapter 100 that came about in 2014, how it performs, how successful it's been, and if you have any other observations as far as the history of this county and Chapter 100 bonds, so we can kind of see where we've been before we start to engage in another one.
yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that without having a chance to do some digging on that. Our involvement was at the original implementation, at the administration part. We've been pretty much hands off, not from our requests or anything. It's just we've not had any questions about it. Sure. I know that there were a couple of criteria. We talked about jobs and dollars that were committed. There were 2 series of bonds, one for each of 2 different companies that were being done at the same time. It's basically a technology play. There's a total of about $160 million that would have been eligible for tax abatement for the technology equipment that have been purchased and installed in the county. There was also a requirement that they have a payroll of at least $1.6 million that would be at that site providing services. And so I'm not able to comment on what would happen. It was pretty much 100% abatement so long as they met those 2 criteria, but I don't have the details of how that's actually been implemented and processed.
And the thing is, when I think of Chapter 100s, I think of municipalities more than I think of counties. I don't know if that's just situational or if that is indeed the case. I suspect it is the case, which leads me to the conclusion that Commissioner Wagner, who we're about to recognize, probably knows a good deal more than I do about Chapter 100s, and probably ask you some more, I think, illuminating questions. But am I right that this is generally a tool that is used by municipalities more often than counties for any particular reason?
Yeah, well, I don't know if there's any particular reason other than most economic development projects are located within city boundaries, and it's just a matter of providing the development in an area that it needs services. The one that's being requested just happens to be out in the county, and so both the city and county can implement this. It's your decision to make. You obviously are required to listen to the other taxing districts, but it's your decision to make about whether it's implemented. But you don't usually see big projects like this that are located outside a municipal boundary, so.
Okay. Thank you, that's very helpful. Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you, and I'll try to be quick, especially when I'm told that I ask illuminating questions. There's no pressure there. So first question is, and you kind of mentioned this, Sid, and thanks for being here this evening. You mentioned what I will just basically say is that the negotiation that one may have with these sorts of deals, and what I heard you, I'll use my word that I used to use, but I think you'll know what I mean. You can put clawbacks into these agreements so that if there's some level of performance that has not occurred, you can, well, maybe I'll let you finish this sentence. If performance hasn't occurred, what are the sorts of clawbacks that we may ask for?
Yeah, there's a general reference to clawbacks, and most of the time that works in a way that there are targets, like the one that I talked about that was done in 2014. They were required to have a payroll of $1.6 million. So you can do that in a couple of different ways. If any particular year they didn't have that payroll, you could do what we refer to as kind of a cliff drop off. It's just like, you know, the whole thing goes away and you lose whatever it was. You missed your target, you're done. All the property goes back on the tax rolls and we go home. More frequently what we see is that, you know, if it's a job, a number of jobs, or if it's a payroll number or something like that, you see something where that to the extent they miss that target by 20%, then the abatement is reduced 20%. It's a proportionate. So when people say clawback, that's really the clawback that we're usually talking about.
Yeah.
Very seldom do you say, I don't think, I've been doing this 41 years, so I don't think I've ever seen a deal where somebody negotiated it and said, you didn't meet the target, so you got $500,000 of tax benefits for each of the first 3 or 4 years. You got to pay all that back.
Right.
It's usually perspective. So you basically collapse the deal, or you reduce the abatement proportionally with the benefits.
And so going forward.
It's usually going forward. So when you hear people talking about clawback, that's the clawback is like, we granted you 50% abatement for 20 years, just as an example. It's like, okay, well, we're going to take part of that back because you didn't meet your targets. You didn't have the number of employees, you didn't do the capital investment, didn't have a payroll level, or whatever the criteria are.
But whatever that criteria is and whatever that penalty is within the agreement, so that everyone knows what it is.
But, you know, like I said, I've never seen it. That doesn't mean that legally you couldn't try to do that. I just never seen anybody actually implement it. So you go back and say, you got $1 million worth of benefit over the first 5 years.
Yeah.
You got to get that back to us.
Got it. Perfect.
And then we're taking away everything else going forward too.
Understood. You mentioned this before related to the bonds, that there's no risk to the county, and that's what I'm familiar with, but what I don't remember is who is the guarantor of those bonds?
They're not a required guarantor because what we'll do in almost every circumstance, there are some exceptions, but the company buys the bonds themselves. And so it's basically a round trip from an actual legal standpoint. So the county owns the property, you're leasing it to the company. So they're going to make a rental payment to the county for the use of that, which matches up to the debt service on the bonds. So the county has monies that they're turned around and paid to the company because they're the owner of the bond. So they basically cancel each other out. So
it's kind of a closed system at that point.
Yeah. It's kind of a closed system, like you just said. And actually is like, we usually set up the documents so that so long as the company's the owner of the bonds, we just deem that those payments to be made so that they don't have to come up with, if the one that I was talking about was done in 2014, if they had $160 million worth of bonds, if it's got 5% interest rate on the bond, I mean, making an annual payment of that is a big number. So if they got to take out that amount of cash in their operations to make that payment, to round trip it to theirs, so it's going to come right back to them, we just, that could impact their working capital and funding regular payments of payroll and other accounts payable. So long as the company is the owner of the bond and we deem that lease payment to have been made and your principal and interest payment to have been made.
Gotcha. Last question is, since technically the Chapter 100 basically says these assets, whatever these assets are owned by the county, at what point do they revert back to the private interest? Is that when the bond is settled or at some other point?
You agree upon a term of incentive that you're going to provide. So if it's a 10-year incentive, the bonds will have a maturity that matches up with the incentive. So at the end of the 10 years, abatement goes away because we're going to collapse the deal. Whether they've made all the payments or whatever, we're going to deem them to have tendered the bond for final payment, and you're going to convey the assets back to them, and at that point, it goes back on the tax rolls.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Sid. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Looks like I put everybody to sleep.
That, or you were just so thorough that every possible question is answered. We'll go with option 2.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to our continued dealings.
And if anything comes up, you're going to start hearing a little bit about this relatively soon. So if anything comes up, feel free to work anything through Mr. Ryder. You can contact us directly. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
And Commissioner, if I could go into phase 2 of this, which while Mr. Douglas is here, is one of the things you've heard, this is a very complicated process. A lot of discussion and negotiations are done up front when we do receive a proposal. So it is very common for an entity like the county or a city to have a funding agreement with the developer. Meaning the developer signs an agreement that gives the county money. We're probably thinking in the around $20,000. Those funds are used by the county to cover our costs to do our due diligence in the proposal that is being presented to us. It covers our bond counsel, covers our financial advisors, and potentially, depending on the project, it could cover any experts that we would deem appropriate to look into that proposal. If at the end, and again, if the commission does approve a funding agreement, you are not agreeing to approve the project because you've not seen the project. You're not even approving at that time that you're going to give them economic incentives. What we are doing is protecting the taxpayers, and so there's no cost to the county to actually look and analyze this proposal. If at the end, whether the project is approved or whether the incentive is approved or not approved, if there are any funds left over, then those are returned to the developer. But again, our intent of that is to cover the county's cost as we go through our due diligence. The current applicant, the project that we're kind of talking about right now, we have talked to them about pursuing a funding agreement if they're serious about a proposal to the county. So we will be coming back to you in the next meeting or two with a proposed funding agreement with this developer so that we can move forward as they provide us information and do our due diligence. So I wanted to share that with you and give you an opportunity to ask Mr. Douglas or I any questions about a funding agreement or what that means to the county.
Administrator, I assume, because prior to this position, you were working with a lot of municipalities. I'm making the assumption, and it's a little more than that you have some extensive experience when it comes to Chapter 100s. Could you just give us, just maybe a sentence or two about the experience and the process as you see it going forward? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I just want to make us all comfortable with the idea that we have staff that has the ability to navigate these rather new waters for the rest of us.
I'd be happy to share that. Yes, you're correct. In my experience in municipalities, when I was in the city of Harrisonville, we were the first municipality in the state of Missouri that got a Walmart food distribution center. And so that was a Chapter 100. Economic incentives on a pilot that was determined. Certainly had experience over in Wentzville and also in Olathe. While Kansas rules are a little bit different, they certainly issue Chapter 100, very similar projects. And so a lot happened over there with certainly warehouses and things that were happening in the municipality. And I will say every one of those, we strived and had a funding agreement, again, ensuring that our entities were not out of pocket as we looked and did our due diligence on every proposal that we brought forward to the elected body to consider.
Thank you. Like I said, I kind of had an idea that that was where you were at, but I thought it was good to just to have that expressed while we were on the subject.
And
Any other?
One thing I'd
Yes,
like to
sir.
add to what she said is, the funding agreement is set up so that if we set it at 20,000 and you've incurred costs and expenses as part of the negotiations, that we've gone through that amount of money, they're obligated to replenish that money. Because it's not like we get to 20,000 and we're in a jam and you're trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do now? That we still got professionals to evaluate things. And so their obligation will be to continue to fund county expenses that are necessary to get to that point where you can get the final approval.
And certainly those expenses are required for us to perform our due diligence and making sure that we are engaging in a responsible project and use of taxpayer assets. There are no further questions, then we will close the discussion, and that will bring us to that discussion will bring us to focus area update, infrastructure, bridge and road and bridges administrator.
Thank you, Commission. As you know, we try to bring every quarter at least one of our focus areas out of the strategic plan and give you an update on where we are with the goals and initiatives that have been outlined. Tonight's topic is infrastructure, and infrastructure is very large when we talk about those components that are in our focus area. It not only includes our roads and bridges, but it also includes our facilities and our parks. Because it's a very large segment, tonight we're going to bring you infrastructure focus area part 1, and we're going to focus on just roads and bridges this evening. We will come back and give you an update on those other aspects of our infrastructure focus area. And with that, I'd like to introduce Highway Administrator Terry Griffin, who's here to give you all an update on our road and bridge infrastructure update.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. As the administrator has said, this is an infrastructure update about county roads and bridges. Oh, wrong clicker. Try again. As I'm sure you recall, we've talked about this many times. The county has on our rural roads, we have 377 center line miles of roadway, 70 bridges, about 250 concrete box culverts, over 1,600 under road tube or pipe culverts, and well above 6,000 warning, regulatory, and directional signs that the county is responsible for maintaining. Although it's not really part of our KPI at this point, I would like to talk briefly about the culvert replacements that we've made over the last 3 years, or just not quite 3 years, but almost. This is probably a key performance indicator, one of the KPIs that probably needs to be added to our metric and that we'll be looking at more closely in the years ahead. Since 2022, you can see the number of culverts that the county has replaced. We've replaced 12 concrete box culverts in these repaired them in these locations. We've corrected 7 drainage channels that were problems, and then those projects were done by contractors. The 61 pipe culverts that were replaced were actually done by county crews. And with all of our culvert pipes and all of our culvert boxes are all rated on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being a box or a pipe that is in extremely poor condition, failing condition, and a 10 being one that is in perfect condition. And the ones that you see here were taken photos shortly after construction of each of these items, and so they are all rated 10s. Unfortunately, we have nearly 200 pipe culverts alone that are rated of a scale of 1 to 3. That is roughly 12% of our total pipes. That means they're in close to failing condition. If we could do 50 pipes per year, which is 1 per month, 1 per week, more or less, that would be double what we've been able to do this year and well above what we've been able to do in previous years. But at 50 per year, it would take us 4 years just to replace the 200 pipes that we know right now that are in poor condition. Obviously, that is a problem that needs to be solved going ahead. On our box culverts, we have, as I said, we have about 250 concrete box culverts. Those have a much better rate. Right at the moment, we have about 5 box culverts that are in poor condition. The ones that you see that are on the list that have been replaced are the 12 that have been in worse condition than the others. So we still have about 5 box culverts that need to be replaced, but in addition to that, there are about 20 concrete boxes that are narrow. They're like a 1-lane road on a regular 2-lane street, so the road narrows and widens back out. And from a safety and just a consideration for how the county works, that would be our county roads work. That would be a good thing for us to look at replacing in the years ahead. This is one of our key performance indicators is the condition of our bridges on the county roads. MoDOT inspects the county bridges every 2 years, and each bridge is rated in a variety of ways and categories, and the overall way it is rated is a sufficiency rating. And a bridge that is brand new and in good condition has a sufficiency rating of 100. Failing bridges go further down. Now, sufficiency doesn't mean necessarily that the bridge is just failing structurally. It can also include bridges that are narrow, 1-lane bridges that are in poor condition, that are too narrow for the street. They may not meet current design standards, but certainly the structural deficiency, the structural problems are the biggest thing that affect the actual sufficiency. MoDOT inspects all of our bridges every 2 years. December of 2021, only 67% of our bridges in rural Clay County had a sufficiency rating of greater than 50%. By this time last year, with the bridges that had been replaced and repaired, that sufficiency rate had increased to 75% of our bridges, which is still well short of our goal of having at least 90% of our bridges of a 50% sufficiency rating or more. In the last 3 years, we've been able to replace 11 bridges, which is absolutely phenomenal. I think that's probably more bridges than I have seen in any 10 or 15-year period during the time I've been here. The reason we've been able to do that is an interesting combination of funding opportunities that have arisen in the last few years. We've had ARPA money, which has helped us with a lot with the stormwater funds. We've had bond funds. We've also had 3 bridges that we were able to replace with BRO reimbursements. That is federal and state money that reimburses the county for the cost of the bridge. And those different funding opportunities have made a big difference in what we've been able to do in terms of replacing bridges. We currently have 6 additional bridges that are under design or already in construction, and you can see the list of those that are here. Again, this is a combination of factors. We have some ARPA funds up here. We also have some bond funding that will be used to help replace some of these bridges. And we have one bridge that is currently BRO approved, and that is the Stockdale Road Bridge over the 2 railroads. And that is by far and away our most expensive bridge at the moment, because the cost of that bridge construction on the bridge is estimated to be about $3.2 million. And that is the bridge in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. You can see it's highly deficient. Let's just leave it at that. That's all I can say. Additionally, I've listed at the bottom, the last 2 items on the screen are not actually bridges. One is the stream bank repair on Nation Road that we've talked about, and that should go into construction later this fall. And then the other is a small drainage channel on 137th Street that still needs to be replaced. And again, that will be done sometime in the next several months. So with taking all that into consideration, the bridges that we've been able to replace in the last 3 years, we have been able to raise our sufficiency rating from 75% of our bridges up to 80% of our bridges that are now at 50% or better sufficiency. There's still room for improvement in this area, and as we see the 6 bridges that are under construction or in design, that will help us tremendously in terms of being able to get closer to meeting that at least 90% of our goal. As our ARPA funding runs out, which it is pretty much already encumbered, already obligated for various bridges, we're going to need to find additional sources of income in order to pay for additional bridges to be built and replaced, because we're going to continuously have additional bridges that are falling into the lower sufficiency levels. We can't consistently rely on BRO funds, although the county will continue to apply for BRO funds every year. It's a competitive grant situation, and so sometimes we will win grants and sometimes we won't. So as we go forward, I think we'll be looking at not just using BRO funding, but trying to find some alternative sources of funding, and at the moment, I don't know exactly where that will be. We have, as I said earlier, we have 377 centerline miles of roadway. In 2024, the distribution of our road surface types look like this. About 91% of our miles are hard surface roads. That is, they have an asphalt, a chip seal, or a micro seal surface. Only about 9% of our roads are actually gravel roads, which I think is pretty good for the county. And now keep in mind that this was at the beginning of 2024. This summer, we have resurfaced chip seal roads, and we've also taken about just over 2 miles of gravel roads and chip sealed them. So we now, totally, we're just over 22 miles of chip seal that was laid this summer, and that project has already been completed. We have 8 miles of chip seal roads that were upgraded to an asphalt surface, and another 4.5 to 5 miles of asphalt roads that received another overlay. And so totally, we've had about 14 miles of asphalt resurfacing this summer. Beginning next week, we'll start on microsurfacing some of our roads. And when that project is complete, we will have another 15 miles of chip seal that is covered with microseal, and we'll have about 5 miles of asphalt that we'll be preserving with the microseal as well. All of the preventive maintenance that we put in terms of microsealing is a cost savings for the county, because we don't have to, the road will not continue to deteriorate until we have to do expensive replacements later on. When all of our resurfacing for this summer is completed, probably it should be in the next month, this is what the distribution of our roads will look like at the end of this year or through the beginning of 2025. You'll notice that our asphalt miles remain relatively unchanged, but a lot of those miles have moved into the microseal surface type. Our gravel roads, as I said, have been reduced by about 2 miles. And our chip seal roads have also moved either into, some of them, into asphalt or into microseal, and that's why there are differences in the actual percentages. So overall, the percentage of our hard surfaces will increase slightly. I mean, 2 miles of gravel road going to chip seal is not a huge difference in the percentages, but every little bit helps. So we appreciate being able to do that. In other conversations, we've talked about the pavement condition index, and that's the rating system that we give to our roads based on the condition of the roads. A 5 is scored as an excellent condition. There's no visible cracks or stressing. The roads are in really good condition, and then it goes down with different categories all the way down to 1, which is an extremely poor road, severe rutting, extensive potholes and patching. Basically, the road is failing at that point. The goal, of course, is to keep as many of our roads as possible in the 3 to 5 range, that is in the fair, good, or excellent range, and to eliminate eliminate all of the poor or very poor roadways. Based on the pavement assessments that we did in the spring of 2023, so just over a year ago, this is what our distribution looked like. 78% of our roads were in fair to excellent condition. Our goal is 90%, and obviously we were very short of that. From January of 2023 to March of 2024, when we rescored the roads, did the PCI again on all our roads, the county road and bridge staff spent over 6,700 hours patching potholes, repairing deterioration on roads, and in addition, we of course had the resurfacing that was done during the calendar year of 2023. So by the spring of '24, when we rated the roads earlier this spring, we had increased our percentage of roads that were in fair to excellent condition from 78% to just almost 87%. Pretty good increase, but still not up to our 90% goal. By the time we finish all of our resurfacing for this summer, that is all the micro seal and the chip seal and the asphalt all completed, we would expect that our roads will be at 91.8% in fair to excellent condition. The continuous sustained funding just for 2 years has made this much difference in the road surface that we have. And so on behalf of the Road and Bridge Department and on behalf of the residents as well, thank you for the continued funding, because that is what makes the difference, is continuous sustained funding. Another key performance indicator is to provide annual resurfacing or preservation maintenance to at least 20% of our paved surfaces and to 100% of our gravel road surfaces. When the strategic plan was started last fall, we at that time had touched 18% of our paved surfaces and only 93% of our gravel surfaces. When all of our work is completed for this year, we will have completed maintenance on over 74 miles, or just over 21% of our total paved surfaces. So we are slightly above goal at this point, and we've already touched at least 100% of our gravel roads. And of course, the gravel maintenance will continue through the rest of the year because that is an ongoing project. So with that, I would say that we've met some of our goals. We still have a ways to go on some other ones. And I will take questions about that in just a minute, but before I do, I'd like to pause for just a moment and say, it's been a pleasure to work with everyone. I'm retiring this week, so this will be my last presentation. No more. This will be my last presentation. So, but thank you for myself. I've enjoyed working for the county for the last 22 years, and thank you from the Road and Bridge staff as well for the continued funding that you've given us for the last few years. It's been very helpful and allowed us to come closer to meeting our goals. So as a part of that, before I take questions again, I'd like to introduce the interim Road and Bridge Director to you. His name is Pat Klein. He comes to us from the city of Kansas City. He has 27 years of extensive infrastructure experience. He's been with us for a week now, so he knows everything about the county. But I'm sure that he is from our conversations and from the information that we've had together, he is very qualified, and I am glad to turn it over to him. And would you like to say a few words, Pat?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'll take some questions about the infrastructure now.
By the way, thank you very much for your service this county. You've been a great asset where you will be missed. So thank you for the presentation as always. It's excellent.
Thank you.
With that, Commissioner Johnson, I believe you were first on the list to comment.
Thank you, Terry. I was actually going to say I have so many questions. I think it'd be better if I just emailed them to you, come back next week for a follow-up presentation on all this stuff. Now's your chance to throw out a cuss word if you want.
You know what? I think my email's already forwarded to someone else, so.
No, actually, first of all, thank you for all the work you've done. How many years have you been with the county?
22 years.
Wow, good for you.
Thank you.
And to the rest of the staff out there, there's light at the end of the tunnel. This is the last presentation. One day you two will have a last presentation, but her swan song. So anyway, thank you very much. I know this last year particularly has been, there's been a lot of push on you guys down at Road and Bridges, and a lot of pressure from this commission to do things, and I really appreciate how you've stepped up. Even your presentation tonight, I mean, you've gotten really good at presentations.
Finally.
It's not easy to do, but I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the abuse from us that you put up with, and for doing a good job out there, and more than just me, I think the citizens of Clay County appreciate what you do. A lot of them don't see all the things that go on behind the scenes, but I've heard a lot of comments about our bridges and our roads and how they've seen improvements, and that's because of you and your staff. So
thank you.
So thank you, appreciate you, and enjoy your retirement.
Thank you. Well, and I'm sure the staff will continue working even when I'm gone. So Pat will be cracking the whip after me. So.
Commissioner Withington?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for everything, and I hope you enjoy your retirement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lawson?
Yeah, I know, I have been the biggest pain in your fanny of anybody sitting up here on this commission. But I want to tell you, I greatly respect you. Your presentations are always right on the money. And even though I've been as big a pain as I've been, you've always been so gracious to me, and I respect that, and I will truly miss you.
Thank you.
And as different roads get fixed, I'm gonna call you and upgrade you, let you know how we're doing. I know you want to hear that.
Yeah.
No, I do. Thank you for everything you've done. You've took a lot of abuse from me. You've taken a lot of abuse from from our citizens. But like I say, you've always been gracious, and you do a great job. So thank you very much for all you've done.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Me too, just want to join in and thanking you. I've been here just in four of your last 22 years. It's been a real pleasure getting to work with you and seeing you do such a great job. And you've always been very helpful. And I know that you've put a lot of hard work and dedication into your time with the county. And like has been said, we'll miss you. And please accept my very sincere gratitude for all that you've done.
Commissioner Wagner?
Thank you. The only thing missing from your presentation was the mic drop at the end.
I forgot that. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Well, it may be coming. I may have foreshadowed it. But Terry, this presentation is basically the story of what you've been able to do for this county, even in the last few years. Mm-hmm. And it is impressive. It is sometimes probably maddening. But the results just speak for themselves, and I can't thank you enough for what you've done. I wish you very well in your retirement. To Pat, I hope we never have to say, well, Terry didn't do it that way. But in all seriousness, you have someone stepping into your shoes that I think will do an excellent job. And finally, I'll just say, I saw you Tuesday over at Mark, and I guess now that Catholic guilt's hitting me that I got to get that Salem Road thing.
Yes, you really do.
Yeah, so I don't want to call in the middle of the night saying, what, Wagner, you screwed up. So I'm going to do my best for you.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, fantastic.
The residents of rural Clay County will appreciate that.
Well, considering everything else they were showing was nowhere rural, we're going to do our level best for that. But which just goes to show that even when you're director short-timer, you are on the job doing your work, and I appreciate that very much and everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Have fun in retirement.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you. So, Terry, I want to thank you for your 22 years of commitment and dedication here to Clay County. I've been very quiet up here this evening, so when I talk, it's a very serious thing. So I appreciate you, and I'm sorry for whatever turmoil we have caused you, but you were like, I'm done and I'm leaving, but I hope you the best, and if you need anything from us in Clay County, let us know. If you need a cake or to look at some roads with Joanne, okay. I'm sure we're here for all of those things, and hopefully you have some big plans. Maybe you're taking a nice trip, and
thank you.
Forget about culverts for a while.
Thank you.
Further comments or questions?
So Pat, I'll be calling you tomorrow.
I'll look forward to it.
All right then. Well, with that, thank you very much. You did a great job, and I think the mic is wired on there, so I don't know if you can drop it. I don't think you have the slack for it.
Maybe not.
Very well. Thank you. And that moves us out of discussion items. County Administrator comments.
Just a couple of items to remind the commission and the public that the final draft of the comprehensive plan is out on the website. You can go to claycountycompass.com. We're soliciting still public comments, so we encourage everyone to go to the website and take a look at it and provide us information. Also, we're going to be, the county's going to have a booth here at the Liberty Fall Festival over by the fountain. We will have our consultant there who's been working on the comp plan. So again, another opportunity to get input from our citizens, and also we'll be having information there about job openings that we have, and also sharing information about the senior property tax relief program that is available. We will take comments on the comp plan through the end of September, so hard to believe, but that's next week. So again, hopefully people will take a look at that and provide us some information. And then certainly last but not least, I certainly also want to add on behalf of staff, kudos to Terry, and we wish her all the best in her retirement. She has been a joy to work with, and she's very knowledgeable and has a lot of passion about roads, about bridges, about stormwater culverts, and about the county as a whole. And so we really appreciate that. And she was here last night and gave a presentation to the Citizens Academy. She's here tonight doing a presentation. I'm going to try and get one more out of her maybe tomorrow. I don't know. But we wish her all the best, and don't want her to be a stranger and stop by and see us.
Thank you. That brings us to commissioner comments. Commissioner Carpenter, we'll start at your end of the podium.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I just want to briefly address an issue that matters to me. And I'm a big personal believer in freedom across realms, from free market capitalism all the way across to freedom of religion. I think they are the foundational underpinnings of this country. And really can't think of anything more important in terms of what to preserve via government than those things. You know, when we had the discussion a couple years ago to bring back the prayer, the invocation, I expressed some unease at that time. Along the lines of, essentially, I get y'all's perspective, respect the heck out of it, and what I said at the time was, I'm okay with bringing back the prayer if we keep it broad enough to where it doesn't attempt to place one religion above another, because we have people in this country of all faiths and of no faith. So comments that suggest that America, and I'll briefly paraphrase to the best of my ability, but that America will only survive as a Christian nation, I think is inappropriate for government meetings. And then, of course, even perhaps more so inappropriate to use the occasion to engage in politics. So I'm deeply uneasy with our opening invocation today. Just felt compelled to share that with y'all, and hope you'll hear my concern, which is made in good faith, and I hope we can do better in the future. Thanks.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Johnson. Oop, excuse me. Let me go back to my screen. There we are. Commissioner Johnson. Not yet. Not yet. I am, I was doing really well here.
I'm going to push that button for you?
You might. I got more doodads on my screen.
Good. Okay, I just wanted to give a heads up to my fellow commissioners of a topic I've been asked, or I asked to place on the agenda for next week for discussion. Commissioner Lawson brought up briefly tonight, but we had discussed, I don't know, last month or so, we talked about some of the nonprofits that come in here and ask for government money to help support their endeavors. And I'd raised the question as to whether or not that's something that we should be doing. I want to bring that up again, and I've asked that to be put back on for discussion next week, and I'm going to put something down on paper for you guys all to see well in advance. And I know it's not, there's some philosophical differences there, and I appreciate that. I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with either idea. There's just philosophical differences on how we govern and how we use taxpayer money. So I just want to give you guys a heads up that that's going to be coming next week, and I hope to get something on paper actually tonight and get it out to you, everybody, as soon as possible. But it does look like the amount of money that we actually reduced tonight in taxes, was about around $200,000, I think, in the general fund, is about roughly what we've been given to these nonprofits, I think, in the last year or two. So we'll look at those numbers again, but I just wanted to give you guys a head up. There's nothing underhanded here that's coming next week. We'll be able to discuss it and take it from there. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. I have nothing as substantive as the last two comments, but here's what I got. First of all, I'm going to wish my sister Christine a happy birthday. She's probably not watching, but if you see her, tell her I said it. I also want to wish everyone a safe and fun Liberty Fall Festival. And because they're only a couple games away from the postseason, go Royals. Thank you.
Commissioner Lawson.
Okay,
Oh, you've opened a book and you got notes. I'm a little worried.
Oh.
yeah. One of the people who was the biggest proponent, along with Commissioner Johnson, on prayer before commission was me. I was raised in a Catholic home. Man, prayer was paramount. You went to Mass every Sunday. You didn't miss it. If you didn't go to Mass, you didn't go out and play. You know, it was one of those things. This country was founded on the Christian principles. Those men who wrote the Constitution, all of the things that they did to give us all the values that we have, the freedoms that we have, were all done on Christian principles. I'm not ashamed of that in any way, shape, or form. If somebody comes up here and they say a prayer, if they pray to our Lord Jesus, God bless you. I'm happy that you do it. We've had rabbis, we've had every denomination, I think, in here. I've respected every single one of them that have come and prayed to us, because prayers to God, however they are sent, are of value. But I will tell you this, I'm sick and tired of us trying to be so darn inclusive. If I go to Iran, do you think that they say, ooh, that's a Christian, we've got to be careful what we say, let's don't offend her by praying to Allah? No, if I am openly praying my Christian faith, they'll probably stone me. So here in this country, I think that we better get back to our Christian principles, and I'm not ashamed of what I am. I'm not ashamed that we have people come and pray to our Lord, and I'm not going to make a bunch of concession for everybody else. And I respect their religion. They can pray however they wish, but I don't want anybody to limit what we do in this courtroom in this United States of America and forget how we were founded and what our principles were.
Commissioner Withington.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with what Commissioner Carpenter said, and I hope, Jerry, that you will support what we said also. What was said during the invocation today was political, and I'm not just saying that because I support Maggie for state senate, or if what was said about any person on here, I would be saying the same thing, and I think you should also be opposing what was said. This is not the time or place for a political statement. And also, I hope staff will tell whoever comes back and gives an invocation that this is not the time or place for political statements to be made.
Commissioner Johnson, did you want? Okay. Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't disagree with political statements should be made during a prayer, but I'm going to call it a spade, if you will, and you just made a political statement yourself. You purposely did that to throw out who you support.
Well, no, I did it because what I said was, I would, no matter who I saw.
Commissioners,
say
No.
that.
Commissioners, this is not discussion item, this is comment item. Comment time, Commissioner Johnson has the floor. If you would like to renew your comments after he has concluded, but discussion between the both of you potentially could violate sunshine law, so I would like to make sure we keep that straight. Commissioner Johnson?
Thanks. The fact is, you just took an opportunity to give a shout out to your candidate who you want to win. That's what you did.
That's not what I was intending.
Commissioners, once again, Commissioners, keep your comments, if you are going to have a discussion that needs to be noticed up under sunshine law. Commissioner Johnson has the floor, you will have the floor afterwards. You can make comments independently, but you may not make them to each other.
You get my point.
And I hope you get my point too, that that's not what I was trying to do. What I was saying was, even if.
Commissioner Withington, once again, you have not been recognized.
You shouldn't go back and forth, and I thought the whole point was for commissioner comments. Once you say something, it's done.
If a commissioner wants to make comment, I've tried to make sure, and again, we are now talking about the procedure here, not about discussable items. Thing is, one commissioner may have the floor at a time unless we have a discussion going on. By definition, this is not a time for discussion. Therefore, Commissioner Johnson has the floor. Please do not address other commissioners, but make your comments. Commissioner Withington, I would ask you to do the same thing, and that is make your comments, but do not engage other commissioners. This is not a difficult concept, folks. Commissioner Johnson, you have the floor. Commissioner Withington, you will have the floor following Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, so obviously we're in a unique situation here. We have a Senate race going on, and obviously there's one candidate that you'd mentioned, as well as Presiding Commissioner Nolte, who's in that race. And there's different people up here that have a preference for one or the other. That's a fact. And so we're trying to keep that somewhat neutral up here. We were, and obviously there was something mentioned in the invocation that upset some people, and I get that. I'm with you on that. I'm fine with that, no matter who it was. So I'm good there, but then if we're just left at that, that's fine. If you're going to give a shout out to your candidate, and the rest of us should be able to give a shout out to our candidate. That's not how we should play that here. And
Gentlemen,
I just wanted to call that.
And make sure that you are communicating broadly and not to
Right.
each commissioner. I'm sorry to be a little bit stringent about that, but I believe that is the appropriate way for us to conduct
No, enough
this
said. I
meeting.
just didn't want to let it slide.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Withington, you are now recognized.
I just want to make it clear, I wasn't giving a shout out to a particular candidate. I said, as an example, you're right, but I also said to the entire commission that if it was said to anybody up here, I would have felt the same way. So it wasn't that I was giving one person a shout out, and I think our presiding commissioner should be reiterating this to other people, that they shouldn't be using the invocation to make political statements.
Once again, this is comment time, and I welcome the comments of all commissioners. Traditionally, what happens is we make the rounds. If a commissioner would like to readdress a comment, I do not find that out of order. I find that appropriate, but we need to make sure we are addressing not one another, but we are making the comments in this way. So I'm not going to add to where we have gone on this because it just is not appropriate. I think the points on both sides have been made, and we will, I have no other comments beyond that because that would be, once again, engaging in a discussion which we are not legally allowed to do. With that, we are adjourned.
That was the right.
By the way, I'm glad you made that amendment on the